Thank you, Dr. Butler. Moving over to the opposition, our first speaker opposing the motion tonight is Alex Horan. Alex is a third-year undergraduate student reading history at Churchill College. Alex serves on committee here at the Union and won the right to speak tonight through open audition. Alex, you have the ears of the House.
May I first ask that you don't take me wearing blue as political tonight? I just look a lot better in blue. And Dr. Butler, I'd like to pick up on something you just said, actually, that the world does not owe us a living. You're correct, actually, the world doesn't owe us anything. The government that we elected owes us a life, and a good one at that. And also, you can be a dictator and be rich. I think that's something we need to point out here. But I'd like to start with a quote that Thatcher herself quoted on the steps of Downing Street in 1979, where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring hope. Harmony, truth, faith, hope, these are all things, as Dr. Butler has pointed out, that Britain needed in 1979, right? But if this is 2023, why are we asking ourselves if we need a new Thatcher? Let's assess what the 70s brought us. Inflation at a record high, unemployment running rife, 3 million families living in poverty, millions of working days lost to strikes, exploding racial tensions, rampant Euroscepticism, Northern Ireland's terror level threat at severe, a housing crisis, the price of petrol through the roof, the Rolling Stones have a new album, half the audience is in flares. Oh wait, sorry, did I say the 70s? It's very obvious why we're all sat here tonight, because 2023 has been called by some to be another winter of our discontent. And if that's the case, and if what the opposition is saying is true, that Britain needs a new Thatcher, then we're suggesting, or at least accepting to some extent, that Thatcher or her policies were the remedy in the 80s. To burst your bubble, they were not. And I'm slightly confused, and kind of always been slightly confused, of the mythical creature that we have created around Margaret Thatcher, right? Boudica with a handbag, helmet head, Gloriana, Blessed Margaret, whatever you want to call her. Okay, I think it's all a bit much, because at the end of the day, Thatcher, like any good politician, and that's not a remark on her character, was an opportunist. She was just as beholden to the ebbs and flows of politics and historical trends as all others in office, right? She did not single-handedly engineer the rise of Euroscepticism or the turn to Atlanticism, the Falklands War, or the prevalence of Hayek or monetarist economics, or indeed the inflation strikes or high unemployment of the 70s, or any things that led to her continued streak of success and electoral success, right? And even then, her ratings were only ever great in the wake of the Falklands, okay? There were only 7 months between 1979 and 1992 in which more people were satisfied with the government than dissatisfied. But here we are bickering about whether we need her back. Back? No, thank you, not for now. Back for what? Because no, we didn't need her then. The myth of Margaret Thatcher did not save us in the 80s. And I think that's where you're wrong, Dr. Butler. I'm very sorry. But between 1979 and 1987, the amount of people living in poverty in the UK doubled from 10% to 20%. Unemployment hit 11%. Inflation sat at 13.5% 3 years into her premiership, and it surged again in 1987. There was an exacerbation of the tensions in Northern Ireland because she was illegally funding loyalist paramilitaries. House prices tripled. There were violent clashes between miners and riot squads, and the livelihoods of Britain and its people were placed squarely in the hands of yuppie bankers and Milton Friedman. And most of all, the rise of individualism led to something disastrous, I think, for our collective humanity. And entire communities were turned upside down through the hasty and botched closing of the mines, factories, and selling off of the public sector. In fact, I think it's incredibly ironic and actually slightly offensive that we're here trying to respond to the issues we face today in debating whether we need a new Thatcher, when we are living through the consequences of her premiership. Britain is in an incredibly tough and downright dangerous position politically. Okay, we have a massive resurgence in the far right, spurred by record numbers of crime, homelessness, food bank usage, sky-high rent rates, and an uptick in visible political corruption. people are seemingly more divided than ever. People feel poorer now than they ever did. Home ownership, as you mentioned, is now a pipe dream for many. And I would lay the blame at the feet of the bank-worshipping, individualist, community dismantling, and Beveridge Report undermining actions. Yes? Only mean I'm well aware, but that was about 40 years ago. And selling off houses and building no new ones because you're trying to eliminate social housing means that now we are in a housing crisis. But thank you. Ripping the jobs. So I would lay the blame for many of the problems we're facing at the feet of Thatcher and her successors, right? Because ripping the jobs away from entire communities almost overnight and presenting no viable alternatives, offering little in the way of retraining, decimating British industry through deindustrialization, devaluing the worth of the worker, selling necessities with no regard for people in need, trapping people in poverty cycles through benefit restructuring. And there's this idea that there's this idea that those who are jobless, it is all to blame on their idleness. And then we dismantle community resources and we abandon the principle of full employment that the entire basis of the welfare state lays its foundation on. These are not without consequences, and we were stupid to believe so. We have created a generation of people who are angry, disenchanted, villainized, and disregarded, and they are left without hopes, dreams, or prospects. And then you turn around and you ask us why crime rates have skyrocketed. Right? Why racial tensions are so high and why political corruption is so rife and seems to go so unpunished, why the NHS is collapsing and why your children's teachers are on strike. But when you tell people there is no such thing as society, how can you blame them for acting as such? In 1980, the Jam, sorry to quote the Jam, told us that you choose your leaders and place your trust as their lies wash you down and their promises rust. But I'm going underground. And I would say that the Thatcher government sold off the future of their entire population and created a generation of people who have gone underground as a result. Just 6% of people have full trust in the government. 75% of us believe that Britain is headed the wrong way. Populism is on the rise, alongside Google searches about government and medical conspiracies, homesteading, and doomsday prepping. The British people fear, hate, and distrust their government, but apparently the solution is to just bring a new politician in. And it's not even a new politician at this point. It's a politician who we've had before, who has failed us before. What Britain needs is not Thatcher or whatever bastardized version the Tory party keeps trying to force upon us year after year. And for that matter, it's also whatever bastardized version of the anti-Thatcher that Labour keeps cocking up, because we are no longer in 1997. Right? We don't need another Tony Blair. We have to move on. I know I made some parallels between 1979 and now, but that was to show that putting the same plaster on the same wound does not fix anything. It didn't fix us before, it doesn't fix us then, and our problems are deeper. They are worse, they are different. They have been exacerbated by Brexit, the internet, the climate crisis, the shambles of lockdown, and over a decade of austerity. Right? When what Britain needs isn't a person at all. And I think that's where we're going to disagree in terms of me and the proposition. It's not a person, it's not a strong leader, because Britain has no faith in its leaders anymore, whether they be strong or weak. What we need is to stop looking to someone else to fix our issues, whether that is the man upstairs or the one in Downing Street. We need a revival of industry, training for British workers, to rebuild communities, a reversal of privatization, better social security, no thank you, and a fair start for every child. We need better education to protect our welfare state and to pay our workers a fair wage, and also to stop bailing out banks at every opportunity whilst closing down sure start nurseries and community youth centres. Britain needs to stop ignoring the very real fact that Britain has lost its faith in its politicians and thus its state as a whole, which we know, thank you, is what Margaret Thatcher wanted, but it's not the way that this country should be. Britain needs harmony, absolutely, between communities and within them. It needs truth from its government and for its leaders to stop acting like we're so stupid we don't know what's good for us, like we're children who need guiding. What we need is faith in our politicians and our systems, in our welfare state and our abilities and our public sector. But most of all, Britain needs hope. It needs hope for its future and for its people. And no singular person can give us that. And I think it's stupid and incredibly reckless to believe so at this point in our political climate. I'm not sure of how we'll do it, but you didn't come here to watch me set out a 5-year budgeted policy plan. All I know is that it's not digging Maggie up and sticking her back in office. Thank you.